Hello, today we are going to read Fighting for Yes, the story of disabilities rights activist Judith Heumann. It was written by Maryann Coca-Leffler and the illustrations were done by Vivian Mildenberger. Judy was a bright, talkative little girl who loved music, books, and visiting her father's butcher shop. In 1952, when Judy was 5 years old, her mother signed her up for kindergarten. The principal took one look at Judy's wheelchair and said, "No, Judy is a fire hazard." Next, they tried the Jewish day school. That principal said that if Judy learned Hebrew, she could enter in September. Judy took Hebrew classes all summer, but in the fall, the principal changed his mind. "No," he said. "It's just not going to work out." Judy's mother discovered that there were no schools that would accept a girl in a wheelchair. All they were hearing was no, no, no. Judy watched her younger brother and the neighborhood kids walk to school. Judy wished that she could go too, but instead she stayed home. For years, a teacher came to the house for a few hours a week, but for a little girl who loved to read, this was not enough time for learning. Her mother signed her up for after-school activities, but getting anywhere in a wheelchair was a challenge. Push, bump, over the curbs to Hebrew class. Pull, bump, bump, up the stairs to music lessons. Lift, lug, down the basement for brownies. On most afternoons, Judy played with her neighborhood friends, who luckily lived on the same side of the street. They told Judy all about their classmates, teachers, and school activities like gym, library, and music. More than anything, Judy wanted to go to school too. Finally, after a long search and lots of tests, 9-year-old Judy was accepted to the Health Conservation 21 class at Public School 219, also known as PS 219. It wasn't the same school that her friends went to, but it was school. She was excited and a little nervous. It would be the first time she ever rode a bus or learned in a classroom. On Judy's first day of school, a bus picked her up. It had a lift and tie downs for her wheelchair. When she got to her new school, she was rolled into the basement classroom. Inside, there were 8 students, all using either wheelchairs or leg braces. That was not the 4th grade classroom that Judy had imagined. Her classmates were all different ages. Some even looked like teenagers or adults. Where were all the kids? Where was the cafeteria and gymnasium that her friends always talked about? Judy soon learned that the so-called regular kids were upstairs. They were expected to learn and go on to high school. The special ed kids were here in the basement, away from everyone. They weren't expected to learn much of anything at all, but Judy was happy to be going to school anyway. Judy felt lucky to have her school friends. More and more, her neighborhood friends were taking the city bus to go places like restaurants or the library. Judy couldn't go to any of those places. Stairs were everywhere with no ramps to get into the buildings or lifts on the city bus. Judy was stuck at home. Judy heard the word no much too often. It just didn't seem fair. There was one place where Judy felt included, Camp Oakhurst, a summer camp for kids with disabilities. There, Judy and the others had freedom and independence with ramps and trails. Their wheelchairs could go anywhere, to the pool, the dining hall, and even the bathroom. Judy dreamed that someday the whole world would be like camp, a world that included them. At 14 years old, Judy became the first student from PS 219's Health Conservation 21 class to go to high school. Judy had to travel by bus for an hour and a half every day to a wheelchair-accessible high school. Though there were a few other kids with disabilities at the school, Judy was nervous. For the first time, she had real exams and real grades, And unlike her small class at PS 219, Judy joined a big group of kids, many of whom had never seen a kid in a wheelchair before. Judy didn't have many friends at the high school and felt out of place. No one seemed to look at her as an average teenage girl, but Judy worked hard and focused on her studies. Her parents were so proud when they got the word that Judy would be receiving a leadership award at her high school graduation. At graduation, all the students receiving awards were seated on the stage. Judy's father wheeled her to the front, looking for a ramp. "She doesn't need to be on stage," said the principal. "Just leave her down there." Judy's father glared. "My daughter will receive her award on stage with all the other students." Bump, bump, up the stairs they went. The principal followed, directing Judy's father to put her in the back behind the others, out of view. When her name was announced, Judy started to wheel forward, but the principal came to her, making sure she was not seen. "I belong here," Judy said to herself, but most of the world still said no. Judy went on to college and studied to be a teacher. She was happy to be living on campus, but it was hard to get around. 2 steps into her dorm, 1 step into the bathroom. Soon, Judy and the other students with disabilities formed a group to talk about the barriers they face every day. Don't people with disabilities have any rights? How can we make universities more accessible? It was now the mid-1960s, and college students everywhere were protesting. They wanted an end to the Vietnam War. They marched to support Dr. Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement. Judy and her friends knew that disability rights were civil rights, and they wanted to work to help make changes. She joined student government and became active in politics. Soon after college graduation, Judy applied for her teaching license. With a friend's help, Judy made her way to the New York City Board of Education building. The flight of stairs to the door and the out-of-reach buttons in the elevator were the first signs that things might not go very well. And they didn't. 3 months later, Judy got a letter from the Board of Education telling her no. She would not be getting a teaching license because she could not walk. They considered her a danger to the students. No, no, no. Judy was angry. She was qualified. She took all the right college classes and passed the oral and written exams. She knew that this was outright discrimination. Judy decided that she would sue the Board of Education. No more no's. Judy's friend contacted the local media. The next week, an article was published in the New York Times about how Judy was being denied a teaching license because of her wheelchair. Immediately, Judy's phone started to ring. She received calls from civil rights attorneys offering to take her case. Word spread quickly. Before she knew it, there were articles in newspapers all over the country. Then came letters of support, endorsements, and even an appearance on the Today Show. On May 26, 1970, Judy sued the New York City Board of Education and won. Finally, a yes. Then another yes. New York passed a law that said people with disabilities would not be prevented from teaching. Judy was elated, but she knew that her victories were not hers alone. It was only with public support and the strong voices of fellow activists that changes could be made. Judy and her friends were determined to keep fighting. They joined together and created Disabled in Action, an organization to fight for the rights of all people with disabilities. Now 25, Judy was teaching 2nd grade by day. On nights and weekends, she fought for disability rights. While reading piles of legal paperwork, Judy noticed a sentence in Section 504 of the proposed Rehabilitation Act. She stopped. Was she reading this right? She read it again. No otherwise qualified handicapped individual in the United States shall solely by reason of his handicap be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Judy couldn't believe her eyes. This was big. This meant that if a program or organization received federal funds, people with disabilities had to be included and have equal access. If Section 504 became law, buildings would be wheelchair accessible, streets would have sidewalk ramps, and buses would have lifts. Judy smiled. Life would be like her childhood summer camp, where everyone with disabilities had freedom and independence. Judy would do anything to make sure Section 504 became law. But 5 years later, Section 504 was still not signed. It was 1977, and Judy was now working in Washington, D.C., trying to help get 504 passed. But just like stairs and curbs, the path to becoming law was constantly being blocked. The government kept delaying signing because organizations complained that it would cost too much money to adapt their buildings for people with disabilities. Little by little, the wording of the law was being changed and watered down. Disability activists everywhere were tired of waiting. It was time to act. The American Coalition of Citizens with Disabilities, an organization Judy co-founded, made a public announcement. If the government did not sign 504 into law by April 5th, 1977, as originally written, there would be nationwide demonstrations. April 5th arrived, and with no signing in sight, an army of people with disabilities descended on the federal health, education, and welfare offices all over the country. Judy, who was in charge of the San Francisco demonstration, watched with pride as the plaza filled with hundreds of supporters. The crowd was diverse: people in wheelchairs, those with canes and braces, parents of disabled children, civil rights leaders, and church groups were all there to support the cause. Judy rolled up to the microphone and looked out into the growing crowd with a lump in her throat and a sign 504 sticker on her jacket. She began to speak. When they are signed, the regulations for Section 504 will be a historic and monumental first step towards knocking down the walls that stop us, people with disabilities, from being full and equal participants in society. A chant erupted from the crowd. Let's go and tell Hugh and the federal government that they cannot steal our civil rights. Judy turned her wheelchair and headed to the entrance of the federal building. The crowd followed. More than 100 demonstrators with disabilities made their way to the government offices on the 4th floor. They vowed not to leave until 504 was signed. The 504 sit-in had begun. While protests in other cities ended the same day they began, San Francisco stayed strong, time ticking on. Minutes became hours, hours became days. Local and national organizations supported their cause by bringing in medicine, food, mattresses, blankets, and other necessities. The government tried to force them out by shutting off the hot water and blocking the phone lines. The locked-in protesters were not deterred. They communicated with Washington, D.C. and the national media through payphones in the hallway and kept the supporters in the plaza updated by using sign language through the windows. They slept on the floor, they ate hot dog soup, showered in the sink, and supported each other through song and prayer. The protesters would occupy the building until 504 was signed, no matter how long it took. They were strong and proud and determined to be heard. Finally, on April 28, 1977, the government listened. After 5 years, 3 presidential administrations, nationwide demonstrations, a 4-day takeover of the federal building in San Francisco, and more no's than Judy could count, Section 504 was signed. Yes, yes, yes. That is the story of how people with disabilities were able to start participating in life again. I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope that you go out and make a friend with someone with disabilities. We might look different on the outside, but we're all the same on the inside. Have a great day.